Hope you all got some food. I know there's been a bit of a shortage on vegetarian food, so we've requested some more, and that's going to come over from I know if my husband was here, he'd kill me, he's vegan. So anyway, look, it's proven more popular than we thought, so that's all good. So that's going to come again in the break after, in the middle of the day. I think it's around 3 o'clock. We'll also have some tray bakes and things then, so hopefully we'll keep our energy up for the afternoon. One housekeeping announcement. We have an Ulster Bus Day return to Duncannon, if anyone... Sweet. That's all good. I'll run it up to you now in a second. Okay, so thank you for coming back after lunch. We are now going to have our Tech Educators panel. It is going to be hosted, chaired, moderated, razzle-dazzled by our lovely Emma Mulholland here. We've got Deborah Fitzsimmons, Narelle, Diane, Morrow and Rachel McDermott. I'm sure they'll all introduce themselves and tell you all about them in a second. So without further ado, Emma.
Hello everybody. I think most people know me, but for those who don't, my name's Emma Mulholland and I'm a product manager in Shopkeep as of last week. I've just moved to Shopkeep, which is quite exciting. The success of our industry is totally dependent on the pipeline of talent that we've got coming in from our education system. So education is absolutely critical. But there are many issues facing our educators and education at the moment. These range from the difficulty of getting women into STEM topics, the skill set of our teachers and their confidence levels and how we can support them, as well as the range of bodies, industry bodies, business bodies, community bodies, who all want to support IT, but who may not be getting the coordination correct, or who may need some support around coordination. So we've got a range of panellists who are going to discuss these themes today. They're going to each introduce themselves one by one shortly, but they cover a range of like business, community, teachers, ex-teachers. So they will all have a number of perspectives on these themes. So if you want to start, Diane.
Hi, my name is Diane Morrow. I'm a teacher, 10 years experience teaching at a business and careers, and really developed careers plus curriculum in the school I taught it. But I also really developed entrepreneurship and enterprise through taking kids to the States, to New York, taking kids to London, taking kids to Dublin, and really letting them see where enterprise is going and where technology is going. So that really led to my current goals. I lead generation innovation for Campus Day. We have a goal for 2030 with 80,000 employees working within the knowledge economy, and that's really important to look at where the talent pipeline is coming from and where these skills are coming from. So a lot of the research that I've been doing over the last 12 months is really looking at the 21st century skills and making sure that our young people are ready for the fourth industrial revolution. That's been incredibly interesting. We've been able to partner with Department of Education on a number of projects. We've also been with the Department of SEDA on some teacher training. From a really exciting point of view, we're actually not getting into the education inspectorate, so we're getting to see how we're assessing and what we are assessing in schools.
Hello. Oh, does mine work? Oh, yeah, it does. Hi, I'm Narelle Allen. I am the Education Outreach Manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, and I'm also a teacher. Been teaching for roughly 12 years before I moved over into PwC. So I've taught from Key Stage 1 the whole way up to Key Stage 5, and most recently I was lecturing in Queen's University in Belfast in Java, C#, Android, etc. When I joined PwC, I realised that there really is, from teaching and being on the ground, that there was a gap and that there was a need to upskill teachers and students at the same time. So whilst I've been at PwC, I have developed 2 innovative education programmes, a primary school programme that goes out to, our aim is to go out to every primary school child in Northern Ireland and teach them the fundamentals of coding. And then we've got a secondary school programme which is looking at those 21st century skills that Diane was talking about, but infusing them and integrating them with tech and how that can be used to inspire young people into careers in the future. And to date we've reached in a year over 2,200 young people in Northern Ireland.
Hi, I'm Deborah Fitzsimmons from Go2Educate. My background is I've been in education for about 22 years. I was head of ICT and computing at one of our local grammar schools for the last 14 years. And then I embarked on a career break to start my own business there in August last year. So I have an invested interest because I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background. And you might be surprised to know that a very high percentage of teachers have a very similar background in Northern Ireland. My specialist subjects were business studies and economics, and I set out in my teaching career teaching business and economics A level, and then there was a need for ICT teachers, so I began to help out, and then ICT became my second subject, and when I come home to Northern Ireland I went straight into teaching all ICT, Key Stage 3, GCSE and A level, and at the time it was the old A level computing. And then we reverted back to our ICT, and then of course computing came back. So I restructured the school I was in, I restructured the curriculum at Key Stage 3, GCSE and A level to reintroduce the computing. But the challenge is across Northern Ireland is that you've got a very high percentage of teachers who have never done a computing degree like me. So I'm here today really to speak up for them. As part of my business, I develop resources and courses for businesses, entrepreneurs, schools and teachers and young people in the areas of business studies, ICT and digital technology. And as there's a completely new curriculum in Northern Ireland at GCSE and A level for computer science, I created a teaching and learning pack for teachers for the GCSE. And so far I have had 25 schools buy my pack, and they are so grateful that I have been able to provide them with materials that are affordable and they can just take straight to the classroom. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Rachel McDermott. I'm a creative media facilitator at the Nerve Centre. And I'm based in the one in Derry. There's actually a Nerve Centre in Belfast as well, and then we have a sister centre in Armagh, the AMA Centre. I sort of wear two hats. So I'm a creative media facilitator with the Nerve Centre, so I'm in and out of schools every day during the working week, training teachers in terms of coding, film and animation. But also training kids as well and sort of exposing kids to different technologies. Just finished a big massive project using 3D printers as well within schools. So that's sort of my everyday job. But the Nerve Centre this year became the Northwest Partners for the Northern Ireland Science Festival. So this year I just became the Northwest Programmer for the Science Festival for all the events as well in the Northwest. So the Science Festival as well have a massive education outreach programme, as well as just their sort of adult shows and public events that they would do. So all the Northwest events were programmed by myself and the rest of my team in the Nerve Centre. And one of the sort of big, massive education outreach programmes that we would do within the Science Festival would be we called it Foils Showcase, where we had 2,000 school kids come to the Foil Arena, which is like a massive sports centre, and we had loads of technology as well as science, and they all had to do workshops and stuff in it and expose them to that. So that's sort of like my two hats that I kind of wear.
Thank you very much, ladies. So I should explain the format for this. We're hoping to target 3 or 4 main themes throughout the panel discussion. Our panellists will each give us a bit of their thoughts on it, but we'd also like to open it to the floor. So at the end of kind of each theme, if anyone has any questions, we'll bring the mics up and you can fire them down. So given the theme of the conference today, the importance of kind of making women visible and trying to get women into IT, the first question we want to put to the panel is, how do we get more girls interested and involved in technology from a very early stage in their education? I'm not sure who wants to start that. If anyone's got any thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think when girls think computer science, they automatically have this idea in their head that they have to be good. Maths has to be their thing, and it's very techy and beyond their reach. And I think as well that they don't realise that today and in the future that it doesn't matter what career that they will have, they will have to learn and use new technologies. So that's a big thing that I think needs to be sort of pushed, and for teachers to be showcasing and raising awareness.
I think you touched on 2 key points. I think one of the things that's really interesting coming from teaching is if girls can have role models who are really successful, really inspirational, but are also reachable as well, that they can see that they could potentially do that. When we think about technology, I mean, we're preparing our young people for technology that's changing rapidly, for jobs that we don't know will exist, for careers that we don't know will exist. So it's almost like going back and going, well, what skill set do they need in order to work with the technology? And programming, problem solving and empathy and the ability to think creatively and be curious are some of the really big skills that we're seeing coming out on a global level. And when you look at the figures for girls, when you look at their achievement in maths, their achievement singularly in maths as an individual is much more than their achievement than boys. But when you look at their achievement where there's problem solving in maths and they're working in a group where they're having to maybe take a team leading role or work collaboratively, their achievement is much higher. And I think when we look to the world of work and the world of tech, if girls can see that they have that skill set that is so relevant to solving problems and then working alongside the technology, I think that's a really positive step forward for them.
Yeah, I think as well it's really important for kids, to be exposed to technology at a really young age. There's no point exposing them to the likes of, Raspberry Pis and things like that when it comes to, sort of when they get to post-primary. It's really good that they're exposed young and they're exposed, at primary school level, and that people are coming in. It's good for them to see like a new face. And I just know for myself, like going in to do different workshops with kids, you sort of have the grasp of them when you go in, because you're a new face. Sometimes they get fed up looking at the teacher, and you sort of have their interest already. And 9 out of 10 workshops that I've done with kids at primary school age, they've just been so enthusiastic about it, and they're hungry, and they're hungry for it, and they really, really want it. And that it applies to the girls. There's no difference at that age between the girls and the boys, in the enthusiasm and the interest that is already there for them. So it's just really, really important to expose them to the technology.
Yeah, and I also think it's really important that with the girls, that it's the possibilities of the career choices that they can have within the industry and within the sector are tied in with their interests and, with other subjects, etc., that they're in the curriculum, to show that, in 10 years' time, no matter what job you go into, girls, technology is going to be there. You need to embrace it now, but tying it to things like, their makeup and YouTube channels, and getting YouTube artists and saying, well, how do they create their YouTube videos, and going in from, really pitching it at a level that's of a common interest to them, to really get that creativity and keep that enthusiasm so that they want to do careers in the sector.
Mm-hmm. So it's almost like giving them an opportunity to play. The more they can get an opportunity to play with it and see what it looks like, whether it's in medicine or whether it's in wearable health or whether it's in, in coding, giving them that opportunity, that they're comfortable, that it's not a fear factor, it's not something that's introduced when you go into first year at school.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say it's also shown that just for girls particularly, that it's not just coding. Going into IT is not coding. Like, you've got UX designers, you've got all these different, like, really creative job roles where you could actually go in and do, and just opening their eyes to it and just letting them be inspired by that.
I think that all leads into where our curriculum is, there's a lot of irrelevancy now in our curriculum, or we're just not up to date, because within our curriculum, ICT needs to be part of every subject, not just seen as, you have to do IT or you have to do computer programming, and that's really where we're hopefully leading on today.
I think we're kind of almost linking into the second theme that we were going to have a kind of discussion around, which is coordination of educational initiatives. So you were mentioning there that there's a lot of these different tech initiatives happening across Northern Ireland, but there's not a cohesive, coordinated approach via the national curriculum. And actually there's a big disparity between the experience that children have in Northern Ireland and the national curriculum in Northern Ireland versus England, where it is more coordinated. They have better terminology in terms of what they call things. So I think some of the issues at the moment, and we were discussing there over lunch, is we don't even have consistent naming conventions, and we don't actually have as strong a curriculum. Is this kind of something that you think you would have views on, in terms of, we've just been discussing that, we do want to let the children play and we do want to give them access to it, but how do we structure that?
So the curriculum in Northern Ireland is actually one of the most celebrated curriculums that there is. I mean, it is very well renowned, and it does have an awful lot of content to it. But I think where we see there was opportunities to have cross-curricular development, and have ICT and digital technology infused right throughout the curriculum, those focuses on what we are required to deliver as teachers has really impacted on the ability for the curriculum to be as creative as it was once thought to be. I mean, if you take the Key Stage 3, year, or the year 10 year, that's meant to be the year where they're meant to really give an opportunity to learn, to play, to learn history and geography through using IT skills. But yet, because education is so focused on what the deliverables are at the other end, in other words, the A-level grades and the GCSE grades, a lot of then that core content teaching around GCSE falls back into those earlier Key Stage 3 years, and that's where it really impacts. And also, there are so many amazing tech outreach programs for students. I mean, you and I collaborate on the Hive one and Generation Innovation, but there's no overall kind of heat map or organisation of where you go. And if you're a teacher and you're time poor and you're resource poor and your budgets are being cut and you're trying to deliver to get the best A-level grades you can possibly get, or GCSE grades you can possibly get for your students, you don't really have the time necessarily to go and find out that information. And it's quite challenging as an educator to then know where to go and where is best for your students.
And also from an educator's point of view, it's like very much so. You have all these, as Diane saying, that there's so many fantastic outreach programs there, like with different companies doing different things. But as a teacher in the classroom, I need to have, if I'm going to have my kids being taken out of timetable to go and do these experiences, it needs to be something that directly links in with what I'm teaching and takes that pressure off me, or ticks that box and says, right, I don't need to do that, that's covered, that's done. So there really needs to be that joined up thinking where the outreach programs that we've got are linked into our national curriculum, and teachers, and there's visibility for teachers and for senior management within schools to actually see that if we go in and if companies are going in and delivering these innovative programs to give the skills to the young people that are needed for the 21st century, that they actually, it links in with what they're doing, and you can have that clear
it's that awful box where you got to take your pupils out and you have to go, is it desirable or is it essential? And you have to make sure that you can word it in a way that it's essential.
Absolutely.
And that's the challenge.
Yeah, and it's just making sure that as well that what we're doing links in with across the water, so that the global sort of trends that we're meeting with that, and also devise a model that'll be adaptable and that can be continually used in years to come as new technology or as new things come along, so that there is that training, that education focus for teachers, so that they can learn and there is a flexibility in it. So when something new comes in, it can be embedded into the school culture quite easily, rather than it becoming like it is now, quite disjointed, where you've got results orientated versus what industry wants, and there's just no connection. And then trying to meet in the middle is a minefield at times, and then trying to get people involved. And sometimes the programs that are delivered are seen as experiences stand alone, and schools don't then perhaps engage as much as what they should do with industry.
I think a lot more challenging for the post-primary sector, because in primary schools, you've got one teacher who's delivering all the subjects, and it's much more easier to link the subjects together and have your experience of your ICT. Whereas in the post-primary school, if a history teacher is wanting to do a project, say for children to develop a website or something, right away they're straight to the IT teacher. They need them on board. It's more difficult to actually get a collaborated project in place, and that's why the idea of our changing technologies and even the knowledge and skills that have to be built into each subject area, so that teachers actually see that as part of the curriculum. It is actually a priority, and it links in with the overall end, your results.
Yeah, I think as well, like going into just different, as I say, I go into different primary schools and post-primary schools, and I see a massive difference in the post-primary school sector. Post-primary schools that are solely focused on getting their students, getting A-grade students and reaching those top marks and having the best stats for Northern Ireland, and between sort of even secondary post-primary schools, the difference in them is unbelievable in terms of their creativity. If, for example, I'd done a Raspberry Pi project with a top grammar school, and the kids, they couldn't think for themselves. They found it really, really hard to think for themselves and to come up with a unique idea. Whereas in another school, in another post-primary school, the kids were just they were just getting it. They got the creativity, they got the idea, they were able to problem solve, they were able to do it, and they were able to think for themselves. And the difference between them, and that's only one example, but I've seen that multiple times. And I think that's really, really, it was scary for me, whenever I came out going, okay, these are like top students, but they actually can't problem solve and they can't think for themselves. They're only doing what they need to do to get their exam results, which is then scary when you come to industry, because when you work in an industry, you have to problem solve and you have to think for yourself. It doesn't matter if you're really, really smart and can know the subject. You need to be able to think on your feet and be able to problem solve, which I think is a big issue.
But that's really interesting, because I think that goes to a cultural thing within education, that there has to be an ability to take risk as a teacher, and when you're being judged in the way that you're being judged in terms of your career, in terms of your grades, you're very limited to take that risk. So you keep teaching in the way that you need to deliver for your own residuals, but also you have to teach that failing is okay. And that comes back to parents as well, that it's okay to fail whenever you're doing some of this work. And when you think of some of the problem solving and even some of the coding solutions that we would do with them, they have to fail. They have to make sure that it doesn't work initially to learn how from that. And that's a really challenging thing for schools to be able to adopt.
But also I think even our classroom environments doesn't even give the opportunity. They're not, the classroom environment itself isn't set up to allow children to fail, to give them those experiences like of being in a team, being put with people that they don't know, having to find their feet, having to work out, how to delegate tasks, how to manage their time, how to collaborate, how to, use technology effectively to get a task and job done across multiple sites. They're not. Our education system at the moment isn't set up to facilitate that. Much as we want to, and much as there's different people doing different things, it's still not a joined up approach. And with so many people doing different things, a lot of teachers and certainly whenever I was in the classroom, I was hearing all these different things. I never knew which one was the best and which one was, the best one to go for, or why should I go through that one. So I really think, like, as an industry, there needs to be a real joined up thinking in terms of what industry is providing for the schools, and then what the schools want from industry, to get a real thinking in the middle, so that we can get a programme or a solution that will meet the needs of the teachers, the needs of the school, needs of the industry, needs of the pupils, needs of the parents. In a collaborative framework.
Well, just going back to the curriculum again, at Key Stage 3, it's not compulsory to have IT as a discrete subject at all in Northern Ireland. So there are schools here in Northern Ireland who don't even offer IT at Key Stage 3, that's years 8, 9 and 10. And then they're trying to jump straight in to do a GCSE in computing. So that's left down to the school, the principal, and probably the head of IT or computing battling with the principal, can we have this? And then, as well as that, you're looking at the amount of time. For example, in years 8, 9 and 10, I had pupils 1 hour per fortnight. There's not much you can do in a curriculum with that. And if you're wanting people into the IT industry, you need to get them right at that level, right then. And, there's just so many differences between schools. Each schools are doing their own thing.
But if you look at the CAIG strategy for careers, so what we did was we tried to infuse the CAIG strategy right across every subject area, and that was compulsory, and that was part of every school being its good school, and schools and teachers focused on that. And if we look at what's happening with autonomous vehicles, we're looking at ethics and legality, and we learn that through A-level RE. So there's almost a need to take that IT discrete subject and infuse it right the way across all of the subject areas, so that we can see that as it goes on. But that will require some teacher training as well, so that those who are teaching history are able to deliver it through perhaps an app solution or perhaps an AR/VR solution through Google Cardboard. But again, you need to do what you're doing with the schools and the curriculum, but you also need to train the teachers at the same time.
But I think they still need to have, ICT still needs to be a discrete subject, even if it's being taught across, because otherwise you're missing the computing, the programmers there. And I don't think that any teacher in any other subject would be confident in delivering that. Yeah,
I think one of the major problems is that you've got non-ICT specialist teaching, for want of a better word. In some aspects of the computing science, it is a specialist subject, and you need to have specialist knowledge to be able to teach that. So already at Key Stage 3, whenever you've got people teaching programming, the kids are getting switched off because the teachers themselves they don't know the language, they haven't got experience, they haven't even got industry experience, they haven't been out or they haven't made a project on it. There are some that are really, really forward thinking in it and are fantastic at it, but the majority, the reality is a lot of teachers.
I was going to say, we're kind of we pause for a second. We're almost going into the third topic, which we're going to cover, which is the skill set of teachers and confidence levels. We're kind of racing through these at breakneck speed. We've got a lot of very enthusiastic chatting going on here. In terms of from the floor, the two things we've kind of been covering off so far is that the gender disparity in how getting girls interested in IT, and then also the sense of joined up thinking between business and education and community partners to try and make the biggest impact on the teacher's time and on the child's education. Is there any thoughts on from the floor in terms of how we could do that, or any further questions? We've got one over here.
Hi, my name is Maria. I don't want to sound arrogant, which means that I will probably sound arrogant, like when you start. I'm not racist, but no. So it's about you guys work with kids, and you are the educators. I am aware I have nothing to do with schooling, and I haven't even been educated in this country. But I noticed that with a lot of these conversations about how to get girls to get into IT, we talk about, there's not only programming there's UX, or you can be a web page developer. And if you look into statistics, yes, this is actually where where the percentage of women is more. But what we need in IT industry, we need to have women represented equally in other parts, like cybersecurity is one of the areas where there's very, very little women. And it can be, as some people in this room know, it can be quite daunting to work for a cybersecurity company for that reason. You have DevOps. You do not have many women doing DevOps. So I thought that maybe we don't have to concentrate, appeal to the girls who make things nice, pretty, and talk about UX, talk about web development. But we need an angle to tell girls that, for example, you can be a cybersecurity researcher. When you hear a word hacker, it's guys, right? Why not try to appeal, you can prove people wrong, you can be bossy, you can try and find, faults, and it's fun. Why not? So I thought that maybe this could be an important way to get kids not to think only about one kind of angle of industry, but more holistic.
So one of the things we do whenever we're delivering careers is we always give students the opportunity to try every subject, and we really want them to try, and we want them to go out on work experience and go, well, that was for me or that wasn't for me. But cybersecurity, that if you talk to that around parents or around careers teachers, they'll not necessarily understand or see where the career roots are within that, or where the job opportunities exist here in Northern Ireland. So I think that's where industry can help by giving some opportunities for girls to actually go in and see what that job role looks like, and what, from a day-to-day basis, what that individual would be doing. And the more experience young people can see of that and can understand what that career could look like, the better it is for them. I mean, I'll give you an example. I took 15 year 13 students to New York. They had no idea that they could go and work in the UN with their languages as well as their business studies. We actually went to PwC on Madison Avenue, and 3 of my girls said, I want to work here. This is where I want to be. They looked at they were involved with some of the client meetings. They were able to see the people who were about, and they actually then came back, finished their A-levels, and went to an apprenticeship with yourselves, because we were able to give them that experience. And the more tangible experiences you can give young people, the more then they can perhaps see themselves in that role in the future.
But also too, just going back, you were saying about getting people involved into the more technical things like the cybersecurity and the DevOps, etc., for that, and getting more women into those sort of tech careers. It all starts, no matter, by the time girls get to you, it all starts at primary school, their primary school level, and there needs to be a method of reeling them in and inspiring them to, first of all, look at the career. And looking at the career to begin with, it could be, for example, to give the example of one of the girls that are really into makeup, showing them YouTube, things like that. Then you could go on and say, right, well, we've got a selfie box experience that we do. We built a selfie box, and we brought 100 girls in to do a workshop in London, and they went and they did the selfie box, and then they went and they programmed the selfie box with geofilter and stuff over the top of it. These are all 5th year girls, and then they gave us their opinions at the end, and their opinions of career were completely changed. But it was started off with a soft touch, started off with that whole inspiration. Well, look, this is where it's impacting you already. Think about these, and then you gradually up the complexity, so that whenever you've got that hook, so to speak, you can then at that stage be able to go, right, well, this is what you can do in cyber, this is what you can do in DevOps. But in order for that to be achieved within a school curriculum, you need to have teachers that are trained enough that can actually answer those questions on the ground, but also have the links, the strong enough links with industry that if you don't, or you're not in the position to actually field those questions, that you can actually reach out to an industry partner or somebody who has, well, we do cyber, that are willing to give up their time and come in and talk to these girls and to give them that more inspiration. But there has to be a joined up, you can't just go, we have to go and get them into cyber. The only way you're going to get them into more technical roles within the tech industry is by gradually getting that inspiration and then gradually increasing the complexity, and that's fueled through our curriculum at the moment, and that curriculum is infused with industry links.
Okay, I can see another question. Another person raising their hand here, which is great.
At the top.
If you can just tell us your name before your question as well, thank you.
Hi, my name's Grania. Diane knows me because I worked with her on Generation Innovation and getting young girls in. And I do agree with you, there has to be a hook for those kind of girls, who are listening to the world and the world that tells them that it's about makeup, that it's about this and it's about that, but it's actually incumbent on every single person here to be out talking to girls and to be telling them that it's not a weird thing for them to be interested in, which is what the world is currently telling them. And back in the day, it was a weird thing for girls to be doctors. Back in the day, it was a weird thing for girls to be this, that, or the other. And that's currently where we are. And in doing that, what we are saying to young people is, and particularly girls, is this isn't for you. And that's a problem. So every single person in the room needs to be out speaking to every single little girl they know, telling them whatever it is that they do in tech, or whatever it is they've seen other people do, because this insistence that it's not for them and there has to be hooks to get them in doing this, that, or the other is not going to serve them. And it doesn't serve any of us.
I like that putting the action back in everyone in the room. Should we all kind of take a promise that we'll go and speak to at least one or two people by the end of the week? Okay, we're kind of down to the last 10 minutes of the panel. We've kind of touched once or twice on teachers and skills of teachers, so it would be nice maybe to focus on that a little bit to round us up, which is there's an interesting stat here that we were just discussing, which is 0.8% of teachers in Northern Ireland have computing as their specialist subject. So we have these teachers who, a lot of them you say are business studies teachers.
A lot of them are business studies teachers.
That we are kind of not entrusting, because that's the wrong word, but these people are having to teach something that's not something that they're particularly comfortable with, they're specialists in, because there's that lack of skills. So how can we as an industry support teachers? How can we help them increase their skill base and their confidence? And bearing in mind, and this came across very strongly as well at lunchtime, teachers tend to work between 50 and 60 hours a week already. They're already bombarded with bureaucracy and paperwork and all of this other stuff. So how do we start giving them resources and support without having to make them, take on more hours on top of that?
I really believe there needs to be a whole Northern Ireland approach in terms of our key IT industry leaders linking with schools. There only are, in terms of post-primary schools, there's around about 800 primary schools in Northern Ireland. There's about 180 post-primary schools in Northern Ireland. That's not a lot of post-primary schools, and I think between all of these big companies, what I actually find as the head department in the past was it was actually really hard to get direct contact with the big companies. They didn't want to deal with us. They only wanted to deal with the universities and the private or sector who were leading STEM initiatives. They didn't want to deal with the individual school, and I just think because of that, our IT industry is missing out on so many bright young people. And I think that if those industries had links for teacher mentoring systems or coming into schools, it really would open the world, open the door.
Can I just say, just on that sort of industry, it is really, really key that industry do link in with schools, but it's not just going in and giving your average careers talk, standing at the front of the assembly hall and saying this is what you could do. You know, kids don't want to hear that. They want to get hands on and actually experience, you know, what it is that you do. And just for example, I know there's a couple of people in here actually work for Allstate. My husband and my brother-in-law actually work for Allstate, and they came up with this idea and said, you know what, we want to do a project in schools, we want to actually go out to schools and use Raspberry Pis and get kids to create arcade machines. And he said this to me, and I was like, all right, okay, what do you do? And they actually went to the head of the Allstate and pitched the idea to them and said, you know what, we would love to do this. It's not going to cost much money. We're going to work with Fab Lab. We have a Fab Lab in the Nerve Centre, so I put them in touch with them to actually get the kids to come to Fab Lab, cut out the wood for the arcade machine, get these guys to a company called UV Arts to spray paint the sides of the arcade machine, make it all cool, and then we're going to teach them how to actually program and code their games for the arcade machine. So at the end of it, the school will have like a finished arcade machine. The company loved it, and they give them, as I say, it wasn't very much money, give them a bit of money and give them a week off work to actually go out and do that. And that is invaluable. And the emails that I got from some of the parents actually from the pupils in the school was unbelievable. Like, some of them were just like, my kids have never experienced anything like this. This is hands-on. They're really, really interested in doing this type of work. They want me to buy them a Raspberry Pi. Where can I get it? And I would send them links. And that's the kind of stuff that industry need to be doing. They need to be actually going in and doing hands-on stuff, not just sort of going in and giving your average sort of careers talk, because you know yourself, nobody really likes listening to someone stand up in the front of a room for half an hour saying this is what you could do when you leave school. You want that hands-on experience, because that's what the kids are going to remember, and that's what's going to spark the imagination in them, and I think that's really, really, really key.
Following on from that, competitions are a great way. The last time I was in this room actually was a competition run by the Belfast Telegraph about 10-12 years ago on web design, and our children were here. They won one of the prizes. And competitions that cost industry very, very little money are something that really inspires the heads of department to get the young people on board.
I agree with you. I think the competitions are really, and you get those passionate teachers that really want to do it, and they'll give all their weekends, extra hours, whatever it is. But I do think there's a lot of industry that are out there that are working with schools, but it's maybe just not as publicised or as in the media. You know, we have really close relationships with St Ronan's and Novosco, and what Novosco do for that school in terms of helping to promote jobs right across the various function areas within tech is really amazing. I mean, they funded to take the kids with ourselves over to Mobile World Congress, and you can't give kids an opportunity more like that than to let them see what tech looks like in an interconnected environment. But when we look at training teachers, there's a couple of areas. There's teacher training, obviously, for IT specialists, but then there's, you know, the Google Drives that we're using, there's the Microsoft OneNotes. They've all been put into schools or embedded to schools. Your school has the money to do that, but there's no teacher training to actually allow you to use it. So when you give a teacher a log on for that, there's the fear factor, there's the risk of getting it wrong and looking stupid in front of your pupils, and you know, the way we teach is that culture where the teacher's supposed to know the answer. But industry can really help there. I mean, C2K recently ran Google Educator Level 1. Why doesn't industry come together and help run a Google Educator Level 2 for some of the teachers out there? Because if we can use that, we can use problem solving and communication, and let the young people work on some ideas offline themselves and really develop those key skills at the same time.
It's basically a whole Northern Ireland approach, rather than leaving it up to the schools, leaving it up to each individual business to come together. It needs to be a whole coordinated approach, so that there's no school and there's no child is missing out on the opportunities that the IT industry is providing.
I think, guys, sorry, just very aware of time, so we're just going to... so what I've been hearing, basically, and you were just kind of almost touching on it there as well, it's this concept of we need to do a better job at doing some joined-up thinking. The way we've kind of had this conversation about how girls actually are good at the empathy and the collaboration and the communication, and we know that they can excel in all of these areas, but we need to get them in by allowing them to experience it. And the only way and through experiencing it, you're supporting the teachers and you're making their workload lighter. But to create these experiences and to create these role models for girls to actually get an idea of what even is out there, we do need to kind of to create that coordination. So I think there's probably 2 or 3 things we can think about as a group as we walk away, which is, firstly, we should all have a conversation with any girls in our lives, because there's that importance of making those options visible, but also how do we start thinking about creating this joined up approach so that we are making the best impact on the children, on the teachers, in the most efficient way. So thank you very much, ladies. That was a really good conversation. Thank you very much for the questions from the floor. Cool.